Good evening, Sacred Grounds.
Good evening, Martin.
Tonight I'm going to do a poem called From a Wet Rooftop in San Francisco. I am standing on a wet rooftop in San Francisco, flinging little media discs out into the 22nd century. I do not care what people think about it, and besides, no one is looking up in this storm. As long as I can do this, death will not really matter. The rain has poured through a weakened crease in my metaphor, and it brought me up here. The rains beat out merciless mambo patterns of challenge to inertia that lasted longer than we had ever heard. They beat upon the corrugated plastic roofing over the stairways as if it was an amplified percussion instrument. Since I'd been neglectful of my rooftop environment, the dead leaves and twigs clogged the roof drain and the waters collected until they started spilling through the kitchen skylight. They overflowed into the central heavy pipes to form waterfalls on the interior stairway to the basement, and also began dripping from the ceiling of the master bedroom. I quickly set out large pans and cooking bowls in the master bedroom and elsewhere and thought about calling someone who knew how to handle this sort of thing. That would have been the reasonable thing to do, but I'm not always reasonable, particularly in times when, in my arrogance, I forget that my 25-year-old mind now inhabits a 63-year-old body. I pulled the long ladder from the garage, extending it as far as it could go, and set it against the side of the house. I climbed up halfway with my rope in my hand and secured the ladder horizontally by tying it to our balcony with one rope and to the neighbors with another. I scrambled up the ladder, ducking under the phone line on the way, and realized at the top that the ladder reached only 6 inches above the corner of the roof. This would not be a problem, except that the roof itself is slanted upwards at 60 degrees, almost like a dome, and the only foothold is 2 feet to the left of the ladder. This was my first realization of the consequences of an error. If I missed my foothold, there would be just 35 feet of air between myself and the wet concrete. I swung my foot and caught the crevice and then walked back to unclog the roof drain. My rooftop had become a small wading pool with a layer of leaves clogging the drain. This had backed the water up to the level of our skylight and had begun the unintentional indoor waterfalls. I plunged my arms down to the drain pipe and grabbed 2 handfuls of leaves that had clogged the drain. I heard the rush of water down the pipe as the wading pool quickly drained. The house was spared from flooding. At the prospect of coming back down, though, I finally understood how cats get stuck in trees. It has to do with seeing at last how precarious the road back down is. When on the way up, there was only one moment of fear. For the cat in me, it is this corner of a wet rooftop and being stuck in a crevice between a steep sloping gable and a vertical neighbor. The key to continued life becomes the shifting of one knee from this direction to that direction to gain another few inches that can make all the difference in the step toward the top rung of the ladder. If you miss the top rung of the ladder with your hand, or if you miss the top rung of the ladder with your foot, you die. It is simple reality. I took a step back before proceeding and felt in the pocket of my jacket a stack of little metal discs that I had prepared for my forthcoming grandchildren. These were the discs that contained my poetry, my letters, my memories, my feelings. Feeling these made me straighten up and laugh like Buddha at the splatter of rain upon my face. I took the discs out of my pocket. I laughed at the thought that I stand here at this crease in time knitting together a life in the 20th century with dreams of the 22nd century. I want to rip open a hole in the space-time continuum, stick my head through it to 100 years in the future, and just for a moment, smile at the faces of my great-great-grandchildren. These discs are the connections between 2 disjointed universes. For this moment, this is my sky. It is mine to spin out Hydra-headed Hendrix notes, wild thing guitar riffs on the splattering of the rain, and it is mine to claim the mixing of the real and the surreal and to shout out loud that I am doing it. It is my vista. I see Janis Joplin 100 times taller than life standing as a Western Statue of Liberty on Alcatraz Island. I see her standing in her silky robe, dragging a ball and chain behind her, holding a bottle of Southern Comfort under her left arm. From an upraised middle finger in her right hand, her high-intensity light guides all the sailors home to mama. I know that I'm not going to see the 22nd century, but it doesn't matter, because my grandchildren might and their children will. When they do, I too may be present in some form of little media discs. So really, it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter. With these discs, the information about the texture of now, the reality of the 20th century, and the feeling of the beginning of the 21st century will survive. I will turn the tables on them and ask, how will you think of us from the future, from that future time? Will you be amazed that here in the early 21st century, we breathe the air unfiltered straight out of the sky? Will your astronauts have already landed on Mars only to find evidence that it was once green and fertile like Earth before it had too many Bush administrations? Since it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter, I am free to choose. Here at the beginning of the 21st century, we have Navajos searching their tribal websites for traces of information from the 19th century. Will that be how we appear to you, as relics ourselves looking back at a more original time? I choose for it to matter. Therefore, it matters. For me, this is the time right now. I fling into the future those reflections of the past, starting with these moments of near death, those freaks of chance that allowed something, me, to make it through to tell the story. Here's a disc. It is about the time that I was 4 years old in a summer swimming hole in the Ozark Mountains. Why, in God's name, weren't my brothers looking out for me? They were only 8 and 10 themselves, and at the other end of the pond that I was nowhere in their thoughts. It was a summer of greens and browns playing off against the sunlight, and the pond was big enough that my brothers could abandon me to the other side. I lost my footing and could not find it again. The world became a vision alternating between lighted water under the surface and temporarily breaking through to the surface. Air was a precious commodity. I grasped at reeds that would not support until chance found a rock for my foot to stand on. No, fate told me, it does not end here. Here is a disc. It is about boyhood in LA, where they explored the dry underground sewer system because anyone could get down there and because it was an entire unattended empire to play in. Except, of course, when we all went our separate ways and when the tunnels became narrower and narrower to the point where spiders began to claim their territory. Ah, here is a disc. It's about the teenager in Tijuana being chased through the night by the federales on a pot deal gone bad. The point, of course, was that they were not really federales, but rip-off artists who had a perfect finish to the sting. This much I could handle, but my driver going crazy down the wrong way, that was the unanticipated variable. Fate, again, had other plans for me. Here's a disc. It is more full. It describes the heartache of Pasadena, the heartache of New York, the heartache of San Francisco. But how can I call it heartache when it is preceded by that magic with you, under the ginkgo trees in Greenwich Village with a small green ring pledging to love you for as long as it lasts? Or you, 10 years later, showing up on my doorstep at 3 in the morning on Halloween night dressed in a genie costume. Or you, with your flowing red hair and black and white polka dot dress, sliding yourself over a corner of my desk in a crazy crucible time. The curve falls partly of my own making, and it sucks to have no one, to have someone and not realize her worth, to have no one again and then someone again and end up single in San Francisco with a kid to raise and no resources other than the possibilities of whatever there is at the moment. I just do not have time to make it all rhyme. And finally, the redemption of finding you in the late 80s and of having the will to make it all last. Here's a disc with the spirit of the 70s, liberated from Vietnam only to be blasted again when my votes for George Moscone and Harvey Milk were canceled out by bullets from Dan White's gun. The memory of candles in the windows all along our street. And all the way up the hill, tapped the back of my skull like a finger of time, the amplified live voice of Joan Baez drifting through our front window, and we toasted the ghost of Joe Hill to soothe our pain. I fling these discs out towards Sutro Tower, in part because that is the direction of my forthcoming grandchildren, and in part because I believe that the discs will feel more at home in the high-energy magnetic fields of the transmission towers. Call it a poor man's broadcasting system. As I shuffle through the stack, I see that there are too many discs to describe here. They're driven by illusion, dying to get your attention, crawling around on a criminal planet that is floating in a 5-dimensional universe and asking the questions, who do we shoot? And what do we tell the children? I have broken a string of blood-red beads that I did not know existed, and through the Indian in the mirror seen 525 generations of my bead-wearing fathers stretched across the North American continent. I have sung calls to prayer from the minarets in a language that I did not know, sung reggae songs in the studio through a voice that is better than my own, and foreseen the coming of a new dark ages in the age of too many bright lights. Who will understand the significance of the man dressed up as Ben Franklin, standing on a soapbox on the 4th of July at Crissy Field? Who will know the chroma keyed man standing before the blue background, or the one sipping Kiev white wine and playing chess in the Soviet consulate? There is no time, even to explain the discs as the calendar touches lightly on the paper hat boys asking, do you want fries with that? Who will notice the baby in the garbage bin, or all of those Lennons, Brennans, Woodlocks, and Quinns who survived the wooden coffin ships that left the dying Ireland to arrive in the wild-eyed jungle that is still America? All of those are for some other time, for some other little metal discs. Here is one about my trip to the Monterey Pop Festival, another about running relief supplies to the Mississippi Woodcutters Union, one about the night that RFK died, and still one more about finding the real Daffy Duck floating near sunset on the Russian River near Jenner. I fling them all away and laugh. I feel as if I could stand here on this roof for the remainder of the 21st century, but I know better. Finally, I look down to the warm, dry house below, knowing that there is a computer waiting for me to record some more, knowing that there is a woman there to love me some more, and make still more edits in the story of this unique moment in the cosmos. There is no time to make it all rhyme. There is no time to savor the wine. I take a deep breath and make my grab for the ladder.